Motoring 2010 on TSN is brought to you by Quaker State, real durable oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.
In 2009, I was fortunate to have one of the most incredible experiences of my life. I traveled to the Canadian Arctic in Nunavut, just outside Pawn Inlet in northern Baffin Island, and it was here that we traveled to the floe edge, where the open ocean meets the ice. This is where all the animals, the whales, the seals, and the polar bears come to feed. At one point, we got to place a microphone in the water, and we could actually hear the undersea community chit-chatting to each other. It was unforgettable. So fast forward to 2010, I find myself once again in the Canadian North. In fact, I'm in Whitehorse in the Yukon. The reason I'm here, well, Mercedes-Benz gave me a call and said, "Hey Brad, would you like to test drive one of our vehicles by driving from Whitehorse up to Inuvik in the Northwest Territories?" Well, I jumped at the opportunity, figured to be driving one of their rough and tumbly kind of off-road vehicles, right? No, in fact, they told me you're going to be driving the smart car. That's right, the toy car on icy roads all the way up to Inuvik. I couldn't believe it. In fact, a friend of mine responded by saying to me, "Brad, that doesn't sound very smart to me." And I kind of agreed with him. So the first thing I did when I got here to Whitehorse, I found one of the people from Mercedes-Benz and I asked them the obvious question: why?
What the hell are we doing here?
Well, we were asked if we'd like to drive these smart cars to Inuvik. I believe that the idea is to demonstrate that they're quite handy vehicles in the cold weather, and just because of their diminutive size, it doesn't mean that they have, diminutive abilities. So that's what we're about to see.
I couldn't put it better myself.
Over the last 5 years, we have been able to establish the brand here in Canada. It's well known. We have an absolutely dedicated customer base. It's growing day over day. And the reason why we are here now is because I believe the potential is still bigger. And that's the reason why we decided to bring the Smart here to a place which is totally not urban.
Okay, so here's the deal. We're going to leave in a convoy of smart cars from Whitehorse, drive up to Dawson City, just over 500 kilometers, overnight, then head up the famous Dempster Highway to Inuvik in the Northwest Territories, and come all the way back down again to Whitehorse, about 2,700 kilometers.
This was not like a road in the conventional sense. This is an ice road. It's a road made of ice. It's got ruts in it, and it's got stones, and there's covered in snow. It's very slippery. It's quite a challenge to drive on this in any kind of vehicle.
Surreal at times. I mean, I felt like I drove 2,600 kilometers in a snowstorm.
What do you worry about most?
I don't worry about anything. We're going to Inuvik. I worry about pee breaks, but don't put that on there.
What was that?
No, because, we don't have many places to stop along the way, so, we have to not drink too much so that when nature calls, we can stop at a place where the bears don't share the facilities.
The Smart project has been started early in the 80s when a colleague of ours, Johan Tomforde, started to develop a plan to bring a microcar to the road.
The Smart was introduced to Canada for the 2006 model year. We got them in 2005, and I think people were really enthusiastic, more enthusiastic than Mercedes expected. That said, I do believe that the vehicle is something of a curiosity. It's unusual, it's a niche vehicle. A niche vehicle, by definition, is not going to appeal to the mainstream. If it was, it wouldn't be a niche.
First of all, it's a rear-engine, rear-wheel drive setup powertrain. It also has all of the Mercedes safety features such as ESP, ABS, traction control, so the vehicle is very, very safe.
Sorry, I thought it was a woman driving.
Of course, it's slow off the ground. I mean, your ground clearance is very low, and we realized it a couple of times when we stayed in small snowbanks, you won't go in deep snow. If you have a cottage outside of the main town and you have deep snow roads, no.
The first generation was equipped with a diesel engine, a 6-speed transmission. The new one now has a gasoline engine and a 5-speed automatic transmission. The wheelbase is a little bit longer. The suspension has been refined, so the road behavior is much better, less choppy. It gives the occupant driver a better feel for the road and more comfort.
Guys, when we get a big transport truck, we'll be calling it transports, and it's highly recommended that you slow down just a little bit so you don't get blown off the road.
Truck was an experience, because you have to keep in mind that there's a film of snow covering the road. So basically when a semi passed, basically you had a cloud of snow for a couple of seconds, so basically you were snowblind. After the first couple of ones, you get the hang of it.
Good job, guys. You can see how tight that is, right?
Sort of missed a corner there.
Charles Darwin and pedestrians? We make the connection later on Kenzie's Corner.
The original was a rather anonymous vehicle. On this edition of Test Drive, we take a look at its successor. This is the new Chevrolet Equinox. The previous Equinox was somewhat of an enigma. It was capable of doing everything its immediate competitors could do, but somehow it never managed to get potential customers to warm up to it. The latest version, while based on essentially the same platform, is a very different vehicle. Perhaps the single biggest change to this Equinox is the interior design. The old vehicle, well, it just did not say rich. The new one, it is very rich in terms of its quality and the manner in which it's been put together. You can also option this vehicle up to include a nav system that comes with a 40 gig hard drive. There's enough space on that thing so you can store your own music collection. The other thing, well, it's the attention to detail. Pushing this button right here engages the rear child-proof door locks. One more touch, now everybody can get in and out. It is a small thing, but it talks to the attention to detail, and very often the small things make the biggest difference. The Equinox tester arrived with GM's new 2.4-litre four-cylinder engine. With direct injection and variable valve timing on both the intake and exhaust cams, it is state-of-the-art. The 182 horsepower and 172 pound-feet of torque on tap deliver a respectable launch and decent mid-range passing power. Now, nobody's going to be bowled over by the turn of speed, but for most eventualities, it's up to snuff. GM claims a 0 to 100k time of 8.7 seconds for the 4, which is about a second slower than the optional and better 264 horsepower 3-litre V6 engine. The rear environment has been thought through equally well. To begin with, there's limo-like legroom and plenty of headroom. It'll also accommodate 3 riders abreast, and even the person stuck in the middle, well, they've got somewhere to put their feet because there is no tunnel intrusion. It also has a party trick. If you need to carry a lot of cargo, you simply slide the seat forward. That maxes out the cargo capacity, and you've still got some knee room left. The 4-cylinder is teamed with a 6-speed manumatic. Sadly, the manual side only works when the shifter is in the manual position, which negates much of its advantage. Likewise, the upshift-downshift rocker switch, which is again mounted on the side of the shifter handle, makes changing gears a clumsy proposition. The other hiccup comes right out of Toyota's playbook. Whenever the manual mode is engaged, the transmission automatically downshifts to 4th gear. Now, in many cases, 5th gear and occasionally 6th would be the more appropriate. Ultimately, it all means the manual side will see limited, if any, use whatsoever. When it comes to cargo capacity, this Chevy Equinox works. Now, sadly, this rear window doesn't open independently of the tailgate. However, the volume you get inside, much better than average. With that rear seat in the forward position, you end up with around 31 cubic feet of cargo space. Drop the rear seats flat, that number grows to about 64 cubic feet. Now, that is a lot of space given the vehicle's compact dimensions. From the transmission, the power is fed to the road through large 225/65R17 tyres and GM's optional all-wheel drive system. Now it functions well as the redistribution of power is both smooth and seamless. If the all-wheel drive system is not enough to quell unwanted wheel spin, the Equinox calls upon GM's StabiliTrak. This is a sophisticated traction and stability control system. Ride-wise, the Equinox follows the SUV norm. The cushy suspension makes light work of a rough road, which underscores the comfort side. On the flip side, there is a degree or three of body roll when the Equinox is driven enthusiastically. The latter is more an observation than the knock, as the amount of roll tends to be exaggerated by the tall seating position. This Chevy Equinox turned out to be a very pleasant surprise. It's got a very nice interior, it's got the cargo capacity and flexibility you need, it's got decent handling, plenty of power, and its ace in the hole, very good fuel economy. As a package, this Equinox works exceptionally well.
Make sure you check out the Motoring website at motoringtv.com. You can watch any program you may have missed. In fact, how about a trip down memory lane and see what we were driving as far back as 1988. Check out our blog, our photo gallery, and much more. It's all there at motoringtv.com.
So this is the Tesla Roadster. It's a 100% electric car. It's actually the only highway-capable 100% electric car being manufactured and sold on the market today. So 0 to 60 in 3.7 seconds, top speed 200 kilometers per hour, carbon fiber body, all the latest technology. It's been on the market a little under 2 years, but we're really excited because it's coming on the market in Canada this spring.
They don't use salt on the roads in Canada's north. They call it sand, but amongst that sand is a lot of stones. The result, the windshields on our smart cars look like a war zone. Stone chips, cracks, they are a mess. And if we were at home, we'd be seriously thinking of replacing the windshield. But out here, hey, it's par for the course. And amongst all these big transports and SUVs, I think all these chips and cracks give the smart car a little attitude. All right, let's head to the Quaker State Garage and join Bill Gardiner.
Hey Brad, I've never been to the Yukon, but every year when I'm in Alberta, I notice that darn near every motor vehicle out there has a cracked windshield. It's cracked to some degree, and you know what? They don't get too excited about it either. And let's face it, you can have some pretty good cracks in that windshield, and in most cases, most of the time, they're out of your field of vision, and they don't really impair your visibility enough that they could be an issue. Of course, if they do, you've got to replace that windshield. But you know what I want to talk about today, Brad, is in the month of January in Toronto, they just had an incredible amount of car pedestrian collisions, resulting in like 14 or 15 deaths, I think it was, just during the month of January. It was totally disproportionate to normal stats. Let's face the facts, no matter whose fault it was, we as motorists have got to make sure that we're doing everything possible to avoid these types of collisions. So let's talk about some of the things on your vehicle. And you know, you've heard me talk before on this show about the fact that you really can buy reaction time through better visibility. So let's, make sure that we've got great wiper blades on our vehicles. And if we don't have great wiper blades, let's get into a lube shop and get them replaced. Most lube shops will put them on for free just for the price of the wiper blades. So there's no excuse for not doing it. Make sure that you've got lots of good quality washer fluid available for your vehicle, and that you're filling up that washer fluid container on a regular basis so that you don't get into a condition where you're driving and you've got a whiteout circumstance that comes up because you've got on the highway with your washer fluid only partially full. Buy the best washer fluid that money can buy and keep it full. Now, headlights, our journey is pretty dirty. You can see that, you know, it's been through a lot of winter storms, but the headlights don't look that dirty. So make sure that you're always keeping those headlights clean. Keep a cloth in the car, clean them all the time, clean them at the gas station when you're filling up. And when you're replacing headlight bulbs, you can always buy better quality bulbs for most vehicles, and that will make a huge difference in your visibility, especially on an older vehicle. Make sure the lenses aren't cracked or yellowed. If they are, you need to get them replaced. Now let's go inside the vehicle, talk about some of the things that you can do behind the wheel to minimize the possibility of any pedestrian collisions. You know, I've noticed when I get in and out of a lot of my customers' cars, there's an awful lot of them that have different things hanging from the rearview mirror. They've got parking passes and religious ornaments and, you know, all kinds of things just dangling from that rearview mirror. And that's really bad because what they're doing is polluting their peripheral vision. When they look off to the right, when they're turning right around an intersection, there could be a pedestrian stepping off the curb. And if you've got motion here with all this junk swinging from the rearview mirror, you've taken away your peripheral vision. It just makes no sense to me. Get that junk out of the way. Another thing, make sure that you've always got a cloth or a rag inside the vehicle within reach of the driver, because every once in a while in the wintertime, you get in the vehicle with your clothing wet, maybe there's been freezing rain or whatever, and even with a fully warmed up vehicle, you can have the windshield fog up quickly. If you've got something close at hand, you can make a quick swipe so you've got visibility and you don't have a bad situation occur. Another thing, you've got to make sure that that windshield's always clean and that you're paying attention all the time. So make sure that regardless of what the provincial laws are in your province, ditch the cell phone until you're stopped or you're at your destination, return the call, make the call, whatever. But don't be talking or texting on the phone while you're driving, regardless of the laws. And it's going to take cooperation with the pedestrians as well, because they've got to stop and look carefully before they step off the curb. We've got to do everything we as drivers can to avoid these collisions, and if the two working together, we're going to get those stats down. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardiner for Motoring 2010.
We had a chance to drop in on Dawson City on our adventure. This, of course, is home to the famous Klondike Gold Rush. And incidentally, in 2009, they actually produced over 50,000 ounces of gold. Now, this is also the beginning of the famous Dempster Highway. It travels from Dawson City to Inuvik, close to 800 kilometers of gravel road. It was named after Jack Dempster. He was the only RCMP officer here way back when, and he patrolled this vast region all by himself with only his dogs to keep him company. Boy, that's when men were men. And also, the Dempster is the only highway in Canada to cross the Arctic Circle. Boy, you really feel like you're on top of the world. It's very cool.
The conditions up there are, I think, you can't imagine how severe they can be compared to the manicured roads that we drive in the southern provinces. My expectations of the Smart, I think, were exceeded by its performance on the trip. To be fair, this is not its preferred environment. This is not the environment it was designed for. If you live in a city and you've got a Smart and you're worried about the winter, I don't think you should worry. But if you're going to make a trip to the Arctic Circle, your Smart will do it, but you're going to be compromising in certain areas.
This was simply just a demonstration of a habitat in which the Smart is doing well.
Closed captioning of Motoring 2010 is brought to you by the most fuel-efficient crossover on the highway, the all-new Chevy Equinox.
The human body has evolved over millions of years to basically survive about a 15-kilometer-an-hour crash into a tree. I mean, that's about as fast as most people can run. Maybe you're being chased by a cheetah across the savannah. But one of mankind's more modern inventions is, of course, the automobile. Great invention, gives us great mobility, but it can weigh 2,000, 3,000 kilograms, and even in cities it might be going 50, 60 kilometers an hour. If you, with your puny little body, runs into something like that, you're toast. So it's incumbent upon you as the pedestrian to really pay attention when you're walking. Now, we all know driving drunk is a stupid thing to do. But statistically, on a passenger per kilometer basis traveled, walking drunk is even more dangerous than driving drunk. Why? Because if you're driving drunk in a car, you hit something, you're at least in a car. If you're walking drunk and you get hit by a car, you're finished. Now, I'm not saying that if you're too drunk to walk home, you should drive home. It's not what I'm saying at all. It's just that pedestrians, the onus is on you because you're the one who has to suffer the penalty. Now, why don't drivers handle pedestrians better? Well, it's like Bill said earlier on the show. There's so many distractions when you're driving a car. They just don't see you. And a lot of drivers, they don't actually recognize anything that's smaller than they are. So even motorcyclists, most of them understand that, and they try and steer clear of cars. Most cyclists, well, they don't get it either, but almost all pedestrians, totally oblivious. One thing you can do as a pedestrian, if you see a driver and you want to be walking in front of him, make eye contact, look straight at the driver, make sure that he recognizes that you're there, because the consequences to you are very serious. The consequences to him, maybe your belt buckle scratches his fender. On the other hand, going back to that evolutionary theme I mentioned a few seconds ago, maybe this is just gene pool cleansing. I'm Jim Kenzie.
I generally don't like cold weather, but I have to admit, driving these smart cars to the Northwest Territories, while I certainly was quite aware of the sub-zero temperatures, it was also hard not to notice the beauty that winter brings to these regions. As for the cars, well, it felt kind of weird driving a smart car over these icy roads, but we all survived, including the vehicles. No mechanical problems with the exception of a few frozen doors. So what was this all about? Well, I think Mercedes wanted to prove that with winter tires and good driving habits, small cars, even as small as a smart car, can survive harsh Canadian winters and extreme driving conditions. And I think they made their point. Before we go, do you know what SMART stands for? Well, the idea for the car came from a watch company called Swatch. So S is for Swatch, M is for Mercedes, and the rest is art. So there you go. And before we go, a reminder, upcoming is our special Car of the Year 1-hour program, and you can go to motoringtv.com, cast your vote on all our nominees. That's it for now. We'll see you next time out as we continue to bring you more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
There's a large group of people that are totally committed to the success of this product, success from a safety perspective, from a quality perspective, from an environmental perspective, and they're having a lot of fun. They really, really enjoy this vehicle, and I'm sure when you get a chance to drive it, you'll have a lot of fun as well.
Motoring 2010 on TSN has been brought to you by Quaker State, Real Durable Oil, and Michelin, a better way forward.